The United States is made up of 50 states, 48 on the mainland, as well as Alaska and Hawaii, with the government of the US being divided into the judicial, executive, and legislative branches. At the state level, this model is repeated in the form of governors, state courts, and state legislatures, with the office of governor even being known as the president of the state in the early days of America. Now, in the US, all governors are members of the two largest political parties, the broadly center-left Democrats and the broadly center-right Republicans, although there is a huge amount of political diversity when it comes to each party. And over the years, this has drawn an interesting set of characters to the various offices of governor across the country. So let's go over 10 current governors of the US today, from Alabama to California to Alaska to Georgia. Kay Ivey is the current Republican governor of Alabama. She rose to that position after holding several political offices and governmental positions in Alabama ever since the 1970s, with the most prominent positions being state treasurer in 2003, then lieutenant governor in 2011, before finally becoming governor in 2017. Before entering politics, she worked at a bank and as a high school teacher. She is a graduate of Auburn University and is the second female governor of the state, and at 79 years old, she is currently the oldest sitting governor in the US. Mike Dunleavy is the current Republican governor of Alaska. He first moved to Alaska from Pennsylvania in order to get a master's degree in education at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, which is in the center of the state, and looks to be the second northernmost university campus in the US. Dunleavy would go on to work in education for several decades, first as a teacher, and then as a principal, before going on to establish an educational consulting company. He would go on to enter politics by becoming a member of the local school board, before being elected to the Alaska State Senate in 2013, and he would be elected governor in 2018. And even though he comes from an educational background, his time as governor has led him to come into conflict with the University of Alaska itself, when he attempted to cut more than 40% of the school's budget in 2019. Despite this, Dunleavy was popular enough to become the first governor to win re-election since 1998. And as Alaska is the second youngest state in the US, having joined in 1959, out of the 12 people elected governor, only 2 have been born in the state itself, with the rest being from the lower 48, with there being more governors of Alaska born in the state of Washington than Alaska itself. Katie Hobbs is the current Democratic governor of Arizona. Hobbs originally rose to the local Arizona state legislature in the 2010s, before eventually becoming the minority leader of the state senate, then becoming Secretary of State in 2019, and finally being elected governor in 2023, where she won a contentious election against Republican candidate Carrie Lake. Before entering politics, Hobbs worked as a social worker, helping the homeless and running a women's shelter. Arizona is notable as ever since the late 1980s, the majority of governors, 5 out of the last 7, have been women, with 3 of them being Democrats and 2 of them being Republicans, with Arizona being the first state to have a female governor succeed another female governor. Arizona is also one of 5 states not to have a governor's mansion, with the other 4 being Massachusetts, Idaho, Rhode Island, and Vermont. And it is one of 5 states not to have a position of lieutenant governor, with the other states being Maine, New Hampshire, Oregon, and Wyoming. Sarah Huckabee Sanders is the current Republican governor of Arkansas. She is the daughter of the 44th governor of Arkansas and former Republican presidential candidate, Mike Huckabee. She rose to national prominence in the 2010s when she worked for the Trump White House, first as Deputy Press Secretary, and then Press Secretary. She was then elected governor in 2023, making her the first woman to hold the office, and at 41 years old, she is currently the youngest governor in the country. Sanders is considered a part of a new wave of Republican leaders in the state, because up to the mid-2010s, Arkansas was still largely dominated by the Democratic Party, with the most notable Democrat to come out of Arkansas being former Governor Bill Clinton, who went on to become the 42nd President of the United States. Gavin Newsom is the current Democratic governor of California. Newsom initially became involved in politics in the mid-1990s, helping Willie Brown become the first African-American mayor of San Francisco, with Newsom himself being elected mayor in 2003. This was an interesting race, as 4 of the 5 candidates were members of the Democratic Party, while the second place candidate was a member of the Green Party. And in 2004, Newsom made national news for notably allowing marriage licenses to be issued for same-sex couples in San Francisco. After serving as mayor, he resigned to become lieutenant governor under Jerry Brown. Now, Jerry Brown is the longest-serving governor in California history, as well as the son of former Governor Pat Brown. And before entering politics, he initially trained to be a Catholic priest. Brown is also notable for having served as governor from 1975 to 1983, and then returning almost 30 years later in 2011, with Newsom succeeding Brown as governor in 2019. Before entering politics, Newsom ran a successful wine business, having opened a winery in the early 1990s. Now, California has term limits for governor, meaning that Newsom would have to eventually leave office in 2027, with already being talks of him being a likely Democratic candidate for president in 2028. Jared Polis is the current Democratic governor of Colorado. He is the first Jewish governor of the state, and is also notable for being the first openly gay man to be elected governor of any state in the US, as well as the first person to be in a same-sex marriage. Before becoming governor, he previously served in the US House of Representatives and on the Colorado Board of Education. Polis is also one of the richest people to ever become governor, with his net worth being in the range of several $100 million, with much of that wealth coming from a series of internet companies he founded in the 1990s, with the most successful ones being a greeting card company and a flower delivery service. And over the past 2 decades, Polis, along with 3 other wealthy Coloradans, have used their wealth to support the Colorado Democratic Party and help promote progressive legislation in the state, with a group of donors being locally known as the Gang of Four, due to their influence on local politics. Ned Lamont is the current Democratic governor of Connecticut. Now, Lamont has made several unsuccessful runs for political office over the years. He ran for Senate in 2006 and first ran for governor in 2010. However, he would lose both times, with the 2006 Senate race being the most interesting, as the top 2 candidates were both Democrats. This is because the incumbent Senator, Joe Lieberman, had lost the Democratic Party's nomination to Lamont for the 2006 Senate race. However, Lieberman decided to run anyway as an independent Democrat against the establishment, with a party called Connecticut for Lieberman forming around his campaign in order to support his race for the Senate. Lieberman would go on to win, beating both Lamont as well as the distant third-place Republican candidate. But Lamont would eventually go on to run again in the 2018 election for governor, and this time he would win. Lamont is a descendant of a long line of old New England families, with some of his earliest ancestors arriving in the Americas as far back as the 1630s, with several members of his family going on to become prominent figures in business as well as education. Before entering politics, Lamont himself founded a successful telecommunications company, and he continues to serve as an adjunct professor at Central Connecticut State University. John Carney is the current Democratic governor of Delaware. He first took office in 2017. Carney previously served in the House of Representatives and was Lieutenant Governor of Delaware under Ruth Ann Minner, a remarkable woman who served as the first female governor of Delaware. She left school at 16 to work on her family's farm. She would later get married, but her husband would pass away, leaving her a single mother to 3 children. But she managed to eventually get her high school diploma and go to college, all while working 2 jobs and raising her kids. Then, over several decades, she rose up through local state politics before eventually becoming lieutenant governor in 1993 and eventually governor in 2001. In addition to Minner, Delaware has had several other interesting people become governor, with the first governor of Delaware being John McKinley, an Irish immigrant who worked as a physician before becoming mayor of Wilmington and then later governor. When he was first elected governor in 1777, the position was still known as the President of Delaware. However, he only served in office for a few months, because in September he was arrested and jailed by the British forces during the American Revolution, where he notably spent most of his imprisonment upon a British ship known as the HMS Soluby. Then there is also the interesting election of John Dickinson to the office of governor. Instead of being elected by the public, he was elected by the local legislature, the Delaware General Assembly. Dickinson won a landslide vote, winning 25-1, with a single vote against him being from himself. And while he was president of Delaware, he was also elected the president of Pennsylvania the next year in 1782, giving him the unique position of being the leader of 2 states for a short time between 1782 and 1783. Ron DeSantis is the current Republican governor of Florida. Before becoming governor, he first served in the U.S. House of Representatives from 2013 to 2018. As governor, he first gained national attention by being a prominent figure in the culture wars, with DeSantis most notably passing legislation against the LGBTQ community, as well as legislating against the teaching of critical race theory in schools. This has led him to come into conflict with the more progressive citizens of the state, as well as the Disney Corporation. Despite all this, DeSantis remains very popular within the state of Florida itself, as seen by his re-election in 2022, where he almost won 60% of the vote. This was an interesting election, as the Democratic challenger, Charlie Crist, had formerly served as the governor of Florida himself. However, at that time, he was a Republican, and only became a Democrat after he left the office of governor in 2011. Now, in 2023, DeSantis launched a campaign for the Republican nomination to be president, but he would eventually drop out of the race, going on to endorse former President Donald Trump instead. Brian Kemp is the current Republican governor of Georgia. Kemp was first elected to the Georgia State Senate in 2003, before becoming Georgia's Secretary of State in 2010, and he would go on to become the governor in 2019. Kemp initially rose to national prominence during the close 2018 race for governor, when he faced off against progressive Democratic candidate Stacey Abrams. Kemp also made national news in 2020 during the presidential election when he pushed back against Donald Trump's claims of election fraud when Joe Biden won the state of Georgia. Kemp is a fourth-generation graduate of the University of Georgia, and before entering politics, Kemp had a background in agriculture, and he worked building homes. I hope this video has helped people learn a bit more about these governors. Please let me know what you think, and if there's anything I missed, or if there are any other interesting facts you think are important, please feel free to include them in the comments below. And if you live in any of these states, please let me know what you think about your local governor. If you would like to have early access and give feedback on this type of content, please consider joining the Patreon. As always, thanks to my patrons, Untroid and DC, who have helped me from the very beginning. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.